to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Steve Throne, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, President-elect of the NIAAA, and currently serves as an Assistant Principal and Director of Athletics at Millard South High School in Omaha. Throne, welcome to the podcast.
Well, Hutch, thanks for having me on. I'm excited. Obviously, I've been watching this podcast and others, but watching you from afar do great things. So to get a chance today to sit down and just share some thoughts is going to be fun.
That's very kind of you. Let's have you begin by sharing with our international audience where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, etc.
Okay. Big thing for me, I grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska. Was a basketball player back in the day. Always wanted to be a teacher. And so after I graduated high school, went to Tarkio College over in Tarkio, Missouri, a little small town, had a Casey's and a Pizza Hut. And then was there for 3 years, played basketball, studied education, and then the school closed down. So I went to Nebraska Wesleyan in Lincoln and went back home and finished up there, got my degree. My first teaching job, coaching job was at Nebraska City Lords, a little D in our state, D1 would be like a 1A school. We had about 20, 25 kids, a graduating class. And so taught PE, computers, and a bunch of social studies and other things, and then coached everything under the sun. But basketball was my main influence. I did coach football and track and everything else along the way, but middle school, high school, the whole 9 yards. Then after I was there for 10 years and then switched jobs and came to the Millard South and was the teacher coach here, boys basketball. Larry Ribble, who was a legend, a great person, was retiring and was a good friend of mine. We worked camps a lot, and he said, "You need to go to Millard South. It's a great place. It's a great family." And he was right, and loved this place and don't really want to leave. But then, so I came here, was here for 7 years, and they got my admin degree, and then I've been an admin for about 14 now. It's 3 years in Sergeant Bluff, Iowa, and 11 back here at Millard South. So I'm really happy where I'm at. And I'm happy with my journey. I wouldn't change my journey.
Perfect. Let me ask you, because I have memories of Nebraska only because my son-in-law, who is the coach out here in Utah, obviously married my daughter. So you know where Wayne, Nebraska is, because he played at Wayne State, and this would have been, well, it would have been when they were not very good, like in the early 2000s.
Okay.
And yes, I will share this story with you because I shared it with Army, I think, when I had him on a little while ago. So Wayne is playing the Lopers out in Kearney.
Okay.
And so we leave Friday night, go to Cheyenne, stay the night, and drive the 4 hours to get to Kearney the next morning. Check into the Ramada Inn because Army got me the room there. And so I go down to the front desk and talk to the girl, and I said, "Can you tell me where the stadium is? Because I need to go to the football game." She says, "Okay, this is what you do. You go out, you turn right, you go up to that stoplight, you turn left, you go down to the interstate, you go east on the interstate about two and a half hours, get off at exit, I don't know, 12 or whatever in Lincoln." And he says, "And you can't, it's big, you can't miss it." And I said, no, I want to know where the Lopers are playing. She said, "Oh, it's just over there about 4 blocks, not a problem."
Yeah, in the state of Nebraska, a lot goes on in Memorial Stadium in Lincoln too. So yeah,
oh yeah,
that's funny.
absolutely.
That's a great story.
And so you played basketball in college.
I did. Yep. Played for Chip Parsley and Mike Beard and at Tarkio, 2 great guys. Loved them. They pushed me farther than I ever thought I could go and made me a lot better player and man.
Obviously, if we ever get a 3-on-3 tournament in the NIAAA, I'm getting you, Big Rich Barton, and Dave Ticker from the executive director in Washington.
I like
and
it.
there'll be no one that can beat us because with you guys in front,
I
unless they
like
can
it.
shoot the threes over the top, we could win a lot of games.
Well, Rich and I'd have to decide who's going to play point guard because every big kid thinks they can play point guard. So we'd have to figure out who's going to step out, shoot the three, and handle.
True enough. Let's have you talk for a minute, Throny, about some of the mentors in your life that have had an effect on you both as a youngster and then in your professional life.
Yeah, I think for me, the people that had the most impact on me were one, grew up, my dad left when I was young, divorced my mom. And so grew up without a father in the house. And so my grandfather kind of took over that role. And he was very stern, bigger guy like myself. And so he was very demanding, but he taught me how to do things the right way. But then my high school coach, Aldi Johnson, who's a Hall of Fame basketball coach here in the state of Nebraska, about 5'7", 5'8", but he would grab me from time to time and have to maybe talk me into doing some things at a higher level. And I just always appreciated his mentorship. But what he did for me, I was a free and reduced kid. So mom was working all the time. We didn't have a lot of money. And he would say to me, you want to go to this team camp? Do you want to go to this individual camp? I'll pay for this league or whatever. And I'd say, yeah. And he'd say, then you need to do some work to do it because I'm not going to just pay for it. You're going to have to come do some work at my house. And so I'd paint a fence. I'd help him build different things. And he put me to work and gave me a job to pay for those, and it taught me a lesson about, hard work is the way that you have to do. Hard work is the best route to go to get to what you want to do. And he taught me to do that. And he was always there for me. He died a couple of years ago in his 90s, and he and I had a great relationship. And like I say all the time, it's a lot like parents. Your parents and coaches and those mentors that you have, they get smarter all the time. And he did throughout his whole life. He just got smarter and smarter. And he was a great man, great coach, and he was a great Christian. And so it was just one of those people that had a huge impact. And I've tried to emulate a lot of things that he did as far as the way he treated people and how he builds relationships. And then, like I said, his phrase was always outwork people. And that's what I've always tried to pride myself on. So those two are probably the biggest influences for me along the way. I also had Father Johnson, who was the superintendent at Nebraska City Lords. I've had some principals along the way, John Lopez, Curtis Case, Heidi Weaver, and Jason Klingensmith, people like that who have been great leaders for me too, and mentors, and my superintendents, Rod Earlywine, and then James Hudson, and then Dr. Schwartz, who I have now. Those people have really impacted who I am.
Perfect. Let me ask you a little bit of a personal question, Throny. What's your biggest failure or disappointment, and what did you learn from it?
Two things that come to mind, and one's really recent right now. The other one is back when I was at Nebraska City Lords, I was a basketball coach, but I coached all sports in middle school, and I had a young man, his name's Colin, who two kids actually, Colin and Scott, were two kids that were athletes for me and students, and both of them killed themselves. And so anytime you lose a student, you say to yourself, what could you have done differently? And those relationships should help them to realize they could come talk to you before they had made a poor decision, or just try to find ways to support them so they don't feel the way they do. The other one would be right now, we're working through some curriculum where we're trying to create some classes in our PE that could be more sports based, and we're trying to create a sports performance class that would allow PE teachers and coaches to do some more things with their teams. And so I've been working with the different groups, curriculum groups, and our staff and those people. I don't know if I didn't do a very good job of getting deep enough on my communication and getting it out as in a timely manner that I would have liked. And so I'm kind of living through that right now and trying to figure out how to snap back and get some of that fixed.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's talk for a minute about the job of AD and how much it's changed or how much it's the same since you first became a director of athletics.
You bet. And I'm lucky because my first couple of years of being an AD, my kids were older. And so they were in high school or middle school. And so it was easy because they were going to be in the school that I was in, and I would see them and be able to manage that. But in this day and age of just the plethora or magnitude of this job, of the different activities and things that you have to cover and those types of things, it would be really hard. It is really hard on some people as they're doing it. I'm very lucky. My wife is fantastic. My family's fantastic. My admin team, they do a great job supporting me too, and those and our coaches. But for me right now, it's wife's willingness to let me do what I love doing. because I love being an AD. I love being a teacher. I love being a coach. But I love doing the job. But it's a time consuming job, and a lot of times, you know, it too I love supporting, celebrating, and being around our kids and our coaches and our sponsors and our teachers. But there's times where it's a grind, and there's times where you know you're putting in a lot of time. It's not hard work, but you're putting a lot of time, and because you want to be there for everybody that's in your community and be supportive. And I try to do that as much as I can. But you just have to find ways. The word balance is like a unicorn. I don't know if you're ever going to find balance. So people say, oh, I'm going to find balance. You just try to do things that make sure that you're intentional, spending time with your family, doing the things that you want to do. I love to travel, brewery or two, and just sit outside and relax. And I like to fish, I like to kayak, those types of things. So trying to find ways to be around my family and do those other things I like to do too, because the job can be a very, very much of a grind.
That's some great insight. Talk for a minute about, for better or for worse, the influence on social media that it's had on kids and had on you as an AD.
Yeah, and that's where obviously in my role I'm trying to celebrate what's going on inside our building or in our community and in a positive light. And then there's a negative light that's out there that sometimes you'll post something about winning a game or being successful or trying really hard, and then somebody out there who's in New York or somewhere else who doesn't even know your program will start throwing negative shade at your program or your kid. And you know that takes an effect on kids who are coaches who are going out and doing the best they can, and then people who don't even know or maybe throwing negative comments at them. And so you just have to keep that in perspective. We tell our student athletes all the time, or coaches, don't get engaged in negative banter back and forth, and block, delete, do whatever you have to do to keep that negative influence out. Because I do believe, and I try to do with our social medias, I try to make it a positive. And like I said, I try to highlight, I try to make sure people know, man, we got some great stuff going on in our building, from academics to activities to athletics to clubs. And they don't know that when they drive by on the main street outside of our school is Q Street. When you drive by in Q Street, you have no idea what's going on in our building. And so it's my job to get that out to you so you can see it in the community and go, hey, when they talk about Millard South, you know, they do a great job. They do this well. And that's what we want them to think about and talk about.
Excellent. Talk for a minute about your journey with the NIAAA. Obviously, you grew up as a teacher, a basketball coach. All of a sudden, you're into administration. You become an AD. So how do you make that transition? How did you find out about it? Talk for a minute about that, your state association.
You bet. In my first 3 years, I was in Iowa, so I got hooked up with the Iowa State Association and started going to conferences, and obviously then went to the national convention, those things. And then when I got back to Nebraska, the Fitzy, Bill Fitzgerald, and Mark Armstrong, and Jack Tarr, and Mike Purdy, and all those guys just pulled me aside and said, "Hey, you need to get involved. Because that's what I wanted." The thing I wasn't sure about the transition from being a teacher coach to an AD was, I didn't want to lose that camaraderie or that networking, because I love to talk to people about what are you doing really well, and how, and what does it look like? Because they're definitely doing things well. So I'm going to go sit with you, listen to you, and try to pull things that could help me be better. And those guys right away, I call those guys they open the door for me. They opened the door for a lot of young ADs that said, hey, you need to get involved. And so then, that's what I did. I just started volunteering and that's what my wife says anytime I get elected to the president-elect. She's like, so this is another one of those positions where you volunteer and don't get paid. And I said, that's what you are correct, honey. And so I have, those guys were huge for me. And our whole organization was very supportive of just trying to get you in the door, and then you get on the ground, you start working with all the ADs across the state. I'm at a big school, so I'm at a 5A, 6A type school. I want to know ADs across our state. I want to know what their challenges are. How can I help them? Like I said, how can I work with them and get some ideas of what they're doing and steal ideas along the way? And being an old basketball coach, I'd be on the golf course coaching golf, and I'd be saying, what's your best inbounds play underneath the hoop with 5 seconds? I was trying to find a way to make myself better. And it's the same thing as an AD. I try to do that at the state and national level.
I love it. Thanks so much for sharing. And since we're on the topic of the Nebraska legends, you mentioned obviously Army, the late Billy Fitz, great man, Jack Tarr, Larry Monksgard, Mike Purdy.
Yeah.
And so what's maybe you've got a couple, one or two stories about working with them, because I mean, those fellows are known, obviously, along with yourself now, across the United States and internationally.
Yeah. The thing I noticed with that they all have as a common denominator of who they are is they are always they're probably the best example of servant leaders I've ever seen. Those guys are always willing. Mark Armstrong, we still talk all the time. We have a Nebraska cohort that we do together too. Is that he's always trying to find ways to help other people, and he does, and that's that whole group of people you talked about. And so what I learned from them most is just their servant leadership and willingness to do anything and everything for everyone else to help them be better at what they do. And then at the same time, you're definitely going to improve yourself too. But yeah, great people, great men, and obviously great leaders, and have done great things within their organizations the schools they worked in. But yeah, I got to watch those guys and see how they led, which is big because we all lead differently, and their leadership showed, this is how you handle certain situations, and how do you build relationships with people? Because at the end of the day, the magic is the relationships. If you don't have relationships, what we do is there's no value to it.
Well said. So let's talking about the Nebraska greats. So it's easy to see how you became involved in the NIAAA. So let's have you talk how that involvement started for you, and then we'll get into your time on the board after that.
So you're talking about the NIAAA level?
The NIAAA, yes.
Yeah. I think the first thing I did when I started going to the NADC again is I went to the how do you get involved session, which was a great session. How do you get on committees? And at the same time, I had those people in my ear, Purdy, Fitzy, Armstrong, Larry, and all those guys, Jack Tarr, saying, hey, you need to get on a committee. You got to get on a committee. You need to do these things. And I did. And I got on the credentials committee, and I was with Becky Moran and Andre Walker, Sean Dowling, and just some great people across the board, and Damian Fresnelli. And we had a great group of people. And so every time I went to the conference, I was able to meet with those people. We did great things at the conference, trying to get people to vote and making sure the candidates got their word out. And so we could that's such an important process for our organization. And so that's where it started for me. And then from there, it's just like I said, hey, Throne, we need you to do this. Sounds good. I'm in. I was part of the 5th strategic plan, which was what a great honor. And another guy that has been in my ear all the time too has been Mike McGurk, Section 5 Mafia, right. Part of the Mafia. Yeah. So he'd pull me aside and say, big boy, here's what you need to be doing. You need to do these things. You need to get involved. You need to volunteer for this. You need to come to this meeting. You need to come early and do these types of things. And he kind of directed me and has been a great mentor for me too. But everybody I've come in contact, from Phil Risen to Rich Barton to Becky Moran, I mean, all those people, you think of the Lisa Langstons, and I'm not name dropping, but there's people that I now have got the ability to be around they've made me better as a person and a leader.
Perfect. I'm interested. You mentioned the credentials committee. I'm wondering if Mike Hunter from Utah was on when you served.
Mike's
and
fantastic.
Of course, he's now the chair. Yeah. People, and the joke in Utah is, for the people that don't know, because they ask if he's my son, and of course we're no relation. But that's a funny type thing.
Yeah, then Mike's done a great job, and he's obviously doing a great job of leading that committee now, and so one of the best in the nation.
Let's talk about maybe some stories you have while serving on the board of directors. I know I was fortunate enough to serve over a decade ago, and I always like to talk to former board members or people that are on the board, because it's hard to explain to someone that's not been there really what it's like, because I had people tell me, and as much as I thought I knew how great it would be until you experience. So maybe there's one or two stories you can share with your board members, and then we'll get to talk about your journey as the president-elect.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've realized is just the bond that happens within that boardroom with that board in general, is because every year is going to be a different board, because you lose some people, you gain some people, but just every board has it's just a great bond. You get in there, and then people don't realize. And we just had our February meetings, and Sean Dallin and Brad Rose and Everett and some of the new folks were just like, they didn't really going in just like me. They didn't know what to expect. We're going to go to Indianapolis and work this many days. What are we going to be doing? And you get in there, and there's just
Yeah.
there's just a ton behind the scenes that we have to do to help our organization run at a high level. But you look at the people that you're in that boardroom with, and you're walking from the hotel to the NIAAA offices and back, and you're working with the staff. There is no better staff than the NIAAA staff with Patty and Kathy and who am I missing here? Justin,
Nelly, Alex,
Nelly, and who else am I missing?
Alex.
Alex. I mean, what fantastic group. That group is running our organization along with obviously Phil, Becky, and Rich, but that you're in those offices, they take care of you. If you call them, they always have answers. And so what a great group there too. But those walks back and forth and the dinners that you have or the meals you have together where you get to sit down and the PDA group is there. And that's what a great group too for our organization. Those guys are working so hard behind the scenes, but you get to it's just a deeper connection than so many times we go to the conference and it's so quick and then you go home. And this board is like an extension of the conference. It gives you just another chance just to get to know people at a high level. I mean, you're talking Tony Fisher and I have become really good friends, and he's such a great pool player. So I drove up to Minneapolis and we shot a little pool. We hung out a little bit. That's that deeper bond. Dustin Smith, I drove to Oklahoma last year. Dustin didn't tell me there was a tornado the night before. There was no power in hotels, but you'd think Dustin would tell someone. But then, you got Josh Matthews, you got Lisa Corporu, and this Lisa Gingrich. They're just great people that I would never have probably got to know at the level I do now from the first year I was on the board to the second now in my third year. And so it's one of those things where I say to myself all the time, I say, I have to stop and enjoy every minute of this because my time will be over on the board. As you know, too, your time probably went really quick too. So great people, Jim Dorman. I mean, just our executive directors have been on that too are fantastic too. So I can't name them all because they take our whole show, but great people.
No, exactly. And thank you so much for sharing. I like the part you said about the dinners because I understand that it's a busy day and there's a lot of board work that happens in those meetings. But I'm not sure that people out there understand how much board work happens at those meals.
Oh, no
when
doubt.
you're out, when you get that connection. And I think that's an important part. So let's have you now talk about when you decided to throw your hat into the ring with the president-elect. Talk about that process. I know about that process because I went through it twice unsuccessfully, and so you're to be congratulated. But share with our audience, what's that like?
Well, a couple things. I'm gonna go real back 1 second back to those meals and those meetings that we have. The other thing you realize really quickly is ADs are competitive. Phil Reisman is the most competitive guy you will ever see. And so we're putt golf, bags, whatever it is. We've been doing more of that when we're meeting and after we eat or whatever the activity was. And the competition level of ADs is off the chart. But going back to the president-elect, obviously the first year, I did not put my name in the hat just because I wasn't sure I could get, and it wasn't support back at my school, but I didn't really know the depth of the position and what the expectations would be. So I needed to do some research. And so I did not apply my first year. And so I put my hat in this year, obviously, after finding out more about the position. And obviously it's one of those, it's nerve-wracking because at the end of the day, all you really want to do is you want to serve the organization. You want to serve the membership. You want to do whatever you can to help this organization continue to be the best in the world. And so that part is nerve-wracking because you're interviewing with some peers, and then you're also interviewing again when you get in front of the board where you have to give the last two people will say, here's my final pitch for why I should be the person. And so, and at the end of the day, you want to do your best and you want to be successful and you want to, your hope is, and I've said this since I've been elected, is I just look forward for the opportunity. What a great leadership opportunity. And I'm very thankful. But it is nerve-wracking because the whole time you interview with the past presidents and then you go before the board after they trim it down. And it's not an easy process because everybody who interviews, and yourself included when you did, they all will be great presidents. We would all be great presidents because they all want the best for the organization. And so I'm very lucky and blessed that I'm that person that's in that role. And I'm going to do the best I can to make sure that they know that they chose me and that they're going to get the best for me.
That is so well said. Thanks so much for sharing that. Speaking of sharing, let's share your observations about the recent conference in Orlando. And I realized that World Center is a huge hotel. As a matter of fact, I think my second year on the board was one of the years we were in Orlando. And of course, at least when I was there, the board got to meet in a room that was somewhere near the sleeping rooms. But that place is so spread out. And of course, now they have the LTIs at the very end and the vendor show here and all that kind of stuff. But talk about the recent Orlando conference. Obviously, it's after the Nashville conference, which was the biggest ever. 2 years after the Denver conference, which was after the pandemic. So you had the chance to be on the board during the conference. So maybe you have it a little bit different, because I realize you probably had maybe 5 minutes to yourself the whole weekend.
Yeah.
The whole time
Well,
we were there.
I think what I take from the conference now is I'm not gonna say I'm behind the scene, but I know more of what's going on. Is just the work that it takes to pull off a conference of that size. And you're right, though, that facility was so huge, it's just enormous. And then if you almost needed a shuttle to get to the LTIs or
Yes.
the delegate assembly. I was like, where's that shuttle? I need one.
Yeah.
But what a great facility, though. I think people loved it. I think it's a great setup. The rooms in the different vendor hall. I thought the vendor hall was great this year and well done. But just looking at the work behind the scenes, like I said, our office staff and our board and everybody, executive directors. But I also appreciate the NFHS's part in that too, because their partnership helps us to take that to a whole nother level, and we work well together, and it showed at the conference. And but I thought it was a great conference. I thought we had great speakers. I think I thought our opening speaker, John Gordon, and then the young lady at the end, it was Urquad. I thought she did a great job too. It was a great conference. It was another great opportunity to get together with those people that sometimes you only see once a year face to face and reconnect. And then the board piece that I like too is the ability to be kind of a liaison to different committees, which when I was on credentials, I just dealt with credentials. And now, I got to work with Candace on endowment, Mike on credentials. I've done some coaching ed and the different ones, and just getting to know those leaders of those committees and the hard work that our committees do to pull off not just the conference, but everything throughout the year. And the less rights of the world who, around
Yes.
50 and loving every minute, and the passion that he has and that group of endowment does too for what they do. And so I thought it was a great conference. I look forward to Austin. I think it's going to be exciting because it's a new venue. It's a new spot for us, and which is exciting. But that time together just goes so quickly. And then when you're done, you're riding home going, wow, there was just a lot to take in.
No, absolutely. I told the Bad Moon Rising, if we're in Austin, which we will be, that he should have his pick of probably some bands that aren't so famous that'll love to get a chance to play maybe at that open reception, put a little concert on. And so that'll be great.
And that's been one thing that we've added. We started in Nashville, where we've added that little music and food and thing. I think that's been the social, where you just
I love it.
Keep people together. And, and I think that's really gone over well. And I know we're going to continue to do that. And Austin will be a great place because there'll be some great music and barbecue.
Yes, absolutely. Throny, what's the favorite part of your job?
I love people. I just love people. I love to see people grow and be successful and work through maybe some adversity along the way. But I just love people. I love interacting them. I love doing things to help people be successful. I want to grow people. And so at the end of the day, that's what I try to do every day. And I try to do it in a positive way. In our world right now, there's a lot of divisiveness. It's a lot of negativity, whether it's social media, news, whatever it might be, political, whatever it might be. But my goal every day is to bring a positive light to what I do and who I interact with. And hopefully they walk away and say, that guy's got a good positive demeanor. It's helping me to be positive.
Perfect. Let's finish with a couple of questions. The first one being, I need Throny's 2 suggestions for a brand new AD, and this person would have to follow your suggestions in order to be a success. What are your 2 suggestions?
Well, I think the biggest thing for new ADs is that you have to understand, I say this all the time, being an AD, you're not punching a time clock. So you have to be willing to do the work that you have to do to be successful. But as you see the sign on my back wall, it talks about who's your truth teller. Who's that person you can go to, that mentor you can reach out to that will help you in those tough situations when you need to maybe ask a question that you can't ask of somebody in your school, or it is somebody in your school, but you need somebody to shoot you straight, and not be afraid to go get help. But the other thing is enjoy what you do. You got to love what you do, because if you don't, you probably shouldn't do it. And people,
Absolutely.
it's all about people. So make sure you're building those strong relationships.
Throny, we'll finish with this. What question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
Oh, this is good. This is good. Well, after this trip to the board meeting and riding with Rich Barton, and he's driving the van, and I'm an old driver's ed instructor for 17 years. So the stress on my face and the gray in my beard is from those 300 hours of driver's ed every summer. But we're critiquing Rich's driving. It's getting better. Damian was wondering, he was dinging in points throughout the trip, and so I think he's going to be fine. But that's probably something. I'm an old driver's ed instructor too, so those things that we do as we're young teachers and coaches try to supplement our pay to. But those experiences I wouldn't change either, except when a kid walks up to me and say, "Mr. Throne, you were my driver's ed instructor." And I always say, "Well, how's your driving?" "Oh, I had like 3 accidents," or they might say, "I've done really good." So I'm just trying to make sure. Well, I didn't teach you to run into things, so hopefully you're a better driver. But that's something that about me that most people don't know.
That is excellent. On that note, that brings us to the conclusion of this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guest today has been Steve Throne, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, and the President-elect of the NIAAA and the Director of Athletics at Millard South High School in Omaha. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Throne.
Hey, Hutch, you do a great job. Thanks for let me sit in with you today.
Appreciate it. For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.